I'm Jason UFC, and today we have a story about UFC number one middleweight contender Dricus Du Plessis taunts Team Adesanya after receiving a title shot against Sean Strickland at UFC 297. This is what Dricus Du Plessis says. A fumble never looked this good. It was not that long ago that City Kickboxing head coach and coach for former UFC middleweight champion Israel Adesanya, Eugene Behrman, told the media that Dricus Du Plessis would, quote, have to fight someone else after passing on UFC 293 headliner. It says, let's all laugh. Okay, hold on, that's someone's tweet or something on Instagram, so I'm not going to read that. Dricus Du Plessis was originally set to challenge Israel Adesanya for the UFC middleweight championship in September, but withdrew due to injury, which caused Dana White to make the following statement to the media. Quote, this is what Dana White says: "You should never turn down fights when you get the call, especially if it's for a world title." Now, I just want to add a little bit of context there. Dana White, from what I remember, never, ever, 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 ever specifically called out Dricus Du Plessis. He was just saying, just throwing it out there like, hey, if you have opportunity to get a title champion, title fight, just take the fight. But I don't think, from what I remember, and I'm an MMA casual, so I don't remember everything, but I don't think Dana White specifically ever called out Dricus Du Plessis for turning down the fight against Israel Adesanya at UFC 293. UFC 293 saw Sean Strickland stepping up to take Dricus Du Plessis' place and ultimately defeat Israel Adesanya by unanimous decision in a main event title bout this past September. Was that 2 months after Dricus Du Plessis fought in Sydney, Australia? With the victory, Sean Strickland became the new UFC middleweight champion. It was recently announced by UFC CEO Dana White that Dricus Du Plessis will now challenge current UFC middleweight title holder Sean Strickland in his first defense on Saturday, January 20th in Toronto, Canada at UFC 297. Seemingly, the 29-year-old Dricus Du Plessis was not, let me say this again, Dricus Du Plessis was not punished for turning down UFC 293 and will be given opportunity for the title at UFC 297 this coming January. Dricus Du Plessis was given a nod over undefeated Khamzat Chimaev, who many thought would be given the next opportunity at the middleweight title, but Khamzat Chimaev defeated Kamal Usman, both welterweights, in the middleweight division, but it was a majority decision, and when Khamzat Chimaev got ranked in the middleweight division, I don't know if the media does the rankings or the UFC does the rankings, I have no idea, but I know on the UFC official website, Khamzat Chimaev is ranked like number 9, or number 7 or number 9 on the UFC official ranking. So it would be very difficult for Khamzat Chimaev to have defeated a welterweight by majority decision, be ranked number 9 in the UFC middleweight division, and somehow be given a title shot. It made way more sense for Dricus Du Plessis, who defeated former number 1 ranked middleweight Robert Whittaker by second round TKO to get the title shot. I've been saying that forever. This is what Dricus Du Plessis says. "What can I say? A fumble has never looked this good." He said this at 3:07 a.m. Okay, that's interesting. I don't know if that's what he was referring to, but who knows. Dricus Du Plessis recently he defeated Robert Whittaker by TKO in July. See, that's the most important part of this story, that he defeated Robert Whittaker in July, right? At UFC 290. And UFC, like I said, when Sean Strickland originally got the title fight versus Israel Adesanya at UFC 293, there was, Eugene Behrman coming out saying things like, hey, this is why, Dricus Du Plessis is probably going to have to take another fight because he turned down this fight versus us, and now we're going to be fighting Sean Strickland. Dana White came out and said, you should never turn down fights, and when you get the call, especially if it's for a world title. So a lot of people thinking that Dricus Du Plessis was basically in the doghouse, right? Everyone was making fun of him. A lot of comments was, calling him out, saying he was scared, he was ducking, and like I said, from what I remember, as a MMA casual, Dana White never specifically called out Dricus Du Plessis for not taking the fight at UFC 293. Like I've always said, it made no sense to have a number one contendership fight, right? And then 2 months later, have a championship fight, have the winner of the number one contender fight the champion, just like we just had with Hamza Chimaev. Hamza Chimaev versus Kamaru Usman was, ideally a number one contendership fight. But after the fight, Hamza Chimaev said he thought he broke his hand. I believe it came out that he had a torn ligament in his hand, so he was not going to be prepared to fight Sean Strickland in January of next year. So I'm assuming that Hamza Chimaev is going to probably fight the winner of this fight, right? That's probably going to happen. We're going to have to see how it pans out, especially who wins and who loses this fight. But that's probably where the UFC is heading towards, especially with Israel Adesanya being on some kind of extended break until 2027, something like that. But another thing with this story that the first story that I heard from this was Sean Strickland, the UFC middleweight champion. He came out and he said, I don't know if he's trolling or something, but he said that he did not want to fight in January, right? And he did not want to fight in Canada. So I don't know what that's about. I know a lot of people were saying Dricus Du Plessis was, in the doghouse with the UFC, but a lot of people also saying that the UFC does not like Sean Strickland. The UFC did not want Sean Strickland. They didn't think he was going to defeat Israel Adesanya. They don't want him to be the champion, But, so we'll see, because when Sean Strickland won the belt versus Israel Adesanya in Israel Adesanya hometown, I believe, Australia, right? I think you could say that. In his backyard, in Israel Adesanya backyard, the crowd cheered for Sean Strickland, right? It wasn't like he went out there as a heel. He endeared himself to the Australians. We'll see if he does the same thing in Canada, or does he go in as the villain? Because when the odds first came out, Dricus Du Plessis is the favorite in that fight, right? I think a lot of people are going to be rooting for Dricus Du Plessis. So Sean Strickland may be the heel in this fight. He already came out and said he didn't want to fight in Canada for some unknown reason, but saying that he didn't want to fight in January, that's going to be interesting. We're going to have to see what comes of that. Did Sean Strickland sustain an injury versus Israel Adesanya in September? Who knows? Or did he want to fight in February? Or did he want to fight at UFC 300? Who knows? But let me know your opinion of this fight. Who do you think is going to win? Dricus Du Plessis versus Sean Strickland. Now, listen, I'm not Dricus Du Plessis' biggest fan at all. I'm really not his biggest fan at all. I was rooting for Robert Whittaker. Robert Whittaker is my boy. But I personally think Dricus Du Plessis is going to have a run in 2024. If you look at it, he could go in there and defeat Sean Strickland, right? Win the belt. After that, he may have a fight versus Hamza Chimaev. He could win that fight also. So Dricus Du Plessis is a name that I'm going to be looking at in 2024 for, Fighter of the Year. I'm going to call it early. Dricus Du Plessis could be Fighter of the Year for 2024. That's how early I'm jumping on it. But let me know your opinion of this story, because like I said, I am a MMA casual, so what the hell do I know? But I'm Jason, UFC. Today I had a story about Dricus Du Plessis taunt Team Israel Adesanya after receiving a title shot against Sean Strickland at UFC 297, saying, quote, "A fumble has never looked this good." Hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, hit the $1 donation button, and please tune in to the next video on this channel. Thanks a million for watching.